The night Ethan Reed thought he'd finally won at life was the night he quietly lost everything. He had the Manhattan skyline at his feet, a promotion to COO on the horizon, and a stunning mistress leaning into his side at the Ritz-Carlton rooftop bar. His iPhone buzzed with messages from the wife he barely noticed anymore, messages he muted with a single swipe. But when this self-made millionaire finally stumbled home at 3 a.m., rehearsing another polished lie, he found a silent house, signed divorce papers on the counter, and proof his pregnant wife had already moved on. This is their story. After a night with mistress, millionaire came home and realized too late. Pregnant wife had already moved on. Manhattan glittered like it had been built just for him. From the rooftop bar of the Ritz-Carlton, the city stretched out in a mosaic of light and glass. Central Park, a dark patch of mystery, the Hudson glinting like black steel. Ethan Reed leaned back in the leather lounge chair, the stem of a Bordeaux glass balanced between his fingers, and felt the kind of hunger that never softened. He had started with nothing. At least, that's how he told the story at every networking event. The son of a bankrupt contractor from Newark who clawed his way out of overdraft fees and second-hand shoes, into Wharton, into strategy consulting, into the sleek, upward-only world of ascendant capital. Now he was 36, a millionaire on paper, a favorite for the upcoming COO seat, and tonight, the city glowed like a trophy. Across from him, Brooke Sullivan laughed, tossing her honey-blonde hair over one bare shoulder. The satin of her emerald dress clung to her like it had been painted on. She was 27, sharp as a knife and just as dangerous, though Ethan would never have admitted that to himself. "You're doing that thing again," she said, her voice low, teasing. "What thing?" he asked, letting his mouth curve into the smile he used when he wanted people to invest in him. Money, belief, or desire. That. She mimicked his posture, chin lifted, eyes narrowed toward the skyline. The "I'm about to own the universe" stare. "It's just a promotion," he said lightly, though his chest swelled. "COO isn't the universe." "Please," Brooke said, rolling her eyes. "At Ascendant Capital. It basically is. You know what they call you on my floor?" He pretended not to care. "Do I want to know?" "The closer," she said. "The guy who never loses a deal." His iPhone vibrated against the glass table. He didn't have to flip it to know who it was. Olivia. Unread messages, he kept it face down. Brooke followed his gaze, and then looked away, almost respectful. "Almost. You're quiet all of a sudden," she murmured, fingers brushing his wrist. "Second thoughts? About what? My wife or my future?" He pushed the thought away and smoothed a hand over his tailored Tom Ford jacket. "I just closed the hardest deal of the quarter. I'm not having second thoughts about anything." Brooke's hand slid to his thigh. "Good," she said, "because I changed my entire weekend for you." The word slid over the edge of his guilt and drowned it. For months now, the world at home had felt small, too quiet, too repetitive, too full of conversations about grocery lists, clinic appointments, and whether they should buy generic laundry detergent. Here, on this rooftop, with a woman who looked at him like he was oxygen in a burning building, he could pretend that was all beneath him. "Where do you want to go after this?" Brooke asked, leaning in close enough for her jasmine perfume to wrap around him. "Dinner on 5th, he said. "Then wherever you don't have neighbors who care about noise complaints." She laughed, full and easy, the sound of someone who believed her life was about to change. His phone vibrated again. He finally glanced down. Olivia. "Hey, just checking. Are you still at the office?" Olivia. "Clinic called to confirm Monday. Can we go together this time?" Olivia. "You didn't answer earlier. Everything okay?" Olivia. "Ethan." He flipped the phone back over, face down. "Everything okay?" Brooke asked. "Client," he lied, without missing a beat. They always think they're the only priority. He wasn't talking about the client. By 2:30 a.m., the rooftop was mostly empty. By 3 a.m., Ethan was sliding into the back seat of a black Mercedes, jacket open, tie undone, and Brooke's lipstick faint on his collar. She had kissed him at her apartment door, barefoot, laughing, telling him to text her when he got home. He wouldn't. He watched the city blur past the car window, Columbus Circle, the dark silhouette of Central Park, the river. He rehearsed the apology he'd throw at Olivia out of habit. Emergency client dinner. Last-minute drinks. You know how it is, Liv. You want me to get that promotion, right? She always forgave him. She always stayed. But tonight, the moment he stepped across their threshold in Jersey, everything felt wrong. The house was too still, too clean. It took him a full 3 seconds to realize what was missing. The throw blanket Olivia always left draped over the back of the couch. Gone. The framed photo of them in Maine that used to sit on the bookshelf. Gone. He frowned and tossed his keys onto the entry table. They sounded louder than usual. "Liv," he called. "Olivia." Silence. He loosened his tie and walked down the hallway, irritation prickling in his chest. Maybe she'd fallen asleep on the couch, or in bed with her headphones on again, listening to those meditations her friend Emma had sent when the fertility treatment started. But the living room was empty, the kitchen spotless. No mug in the sink, no half-read book on the table. What he did see stopped him cold. On the marble island, illuminated by the warm pendant lamp, sat a neat stack of papers, a familiar Tiffany and Coder wedding band, a small white rectangular stick with a pink line across its window. For a second, his brain refused to connect the pieces. He stepped closer. The ring was his. The band he'd taken off earlier and shoved into his pocket before sliding his hand up Brooke's thigh over dinner. It gleamed next to the papers. He picked those up first, eyes scanning the bolded heading. Complaint for divorce. Olivia Parker, Vern Ethan Reed. His stomach dropped. Dates, attachments, claims of adultery, emotional cruelty, financial misconduct if proven. A second set of papers. Photocopies of emails he'd sent to Brooke. Hotel booking confirmations. A screenshot of his Uber trips. And then the thing he'd refused to imagine. He set the papers down and picked up the plastic stick with the trembling care of a man defusing a bomb. 2 pink lines. Pregnant. His throat locked. Underneath, there was a folded note in Olivia's handwriting. He recognized the way she looped her Y and pressed too hard on the downstrokes. He opened it. "I won't scream. I won't beg. You lied about everything. I deserve better. So does our baby. Don't contact me." The room tilted. He looked around as if she might suddenly materialize from behind the fridge, say it was a joke, say she just needed him to take this seriously, say anything. But the house was bare of her in all the ways that mattered. Her favorite ceramic mug from a Brooklyn street fair. Gone. The stack of worn paperbacks she kept by the window. Gone. The shoes she always kicked off by the door. Gone. Ethan set the test down, his heart pounding in his ears. The self-made millionaire, the closer, the man who never lost, stood in the middle of his perfect, curated kitchen and finally understood. For once, he was too late, and his pregnant wife had already moved on. Before betrayal hollowed her out, Olivia Parker was the kind of woman people trusted with fragile things. Her parents, Michael and Elaine Parker, still lived in a small town in Indiana, where the Friday night high school game was a community event, and the diner on Main Street still served pie like it was the 1970s. Her father fixed cars and taught her how to check oil and listen for engine knocks. Her mother shelved books at the local library and snuck Olivia novels she was technically too young to read. "Love is built like a house," Elaine used to say while wiping down kitchen counters. "Brick by brick, storm by storm." Olivia believed her. At 33, when our story begins, she had built a life that looked, on the outside, like a carefully maintained house in good weather. A modest but charming townhouse in New Jersey. A view of Manhattan's shimmering skyline through the bedroom window. And a husband whose business card made her small-town relatives whistle. She used to have her own glossy business card, too. In another life, before Ethan's MBA, before the miscarriage, before the clinics and hormone injections, Olivia had been a senior marketing strategist at a firm on Madison Avenue. Colleagues like Jordan Blake and Priya Nair joked that she had a sixth sense for people. "You see through the pitch," Jordan said once, shoving a donut into his mouth. "It's like you can hear what the client is too scared to say out loud." She had loved that work. The buzzing rooms, the whiteboards full of half-crazy ideas, the feeling of walking out of a presentation knowing she'd nailed it. Ironically, the same intuition that could read a focus group in 15 minutes failed her in her own marriage, for a long time. When Ethan first suggested business school, they were sitting at their tiny IKEA dining table, eating reheated Thai from the place downstairs. "Wharton, Liv," he'd said, eyes lit up in a way she hadn't seen since their first year together. "If I get in, it changes everything. And Ascendant is already watching me. This could put us in a whole different bracket." "Bracket," she had repeated, amused. "You mean like tax bracket?" "Life bracket," he said, reaching for her hand. "We could have options. For a bigger place. For kids. For everything." The 4 kids part was what pierced her. They'd been trying casually, then not so casually. Then trying turned into appointments and acronyms, IVF, IUI, HSG, and waiting rooms with glossy pamphlets and hollow-eyed couples. "When would you apply?" she had asked, her thumb tracing circles on his wrist. "I already did." He grinned then, boyish and hopeful. "I wanted to know if I had a shot before I got your hopes up." When the acceptance came, she stood with him in their bathroom, both of them hovering over his phone like it was a pregnancy test. "Congratulations, Ethan." He lifted her off the ground and spun her around, both of them laughing. Later, there had been spreadsheets, tuition numbers, income projections, pros and cons. "We can afford it if one of us keeps working full-time," Olivia had said, tapping the cells with her index finger. "But it's going to be tight." Ethan had set the laptop aside. "You're already burning out, Liv. You hate that place some days. And if we want to keep trying..." His voice softened. "You shouldn't be doing hormone shots between back-to-back presentations." He hadn't forced her, but every sentence tilted the scales. "You really think we could do it if I quit?" she'd asked. "We," he said, kissing her palm. "We'll do it." So she did. She turned in her notice at Harper & Coburn Marketing. Her boss, Laura Kim, had frowned. "You're one of the best I've got, Olivia. Is this about burnout or about family?" "Both," she'd admitted. Laura had sighed. "You ever want to come back? There will be a place for you here. Don't disappear into someone else's dreams, okay?" Olivia had smiled, not quite understanding the warning. "I'll be fine." The first months at home weren't bad. She organized their finances, set up color-coded folders for tuition payments and medical bills, cooked real meals instead of Uber Eats, and turned the guest room into a future nursery even before the doctor said it was time. Her world shrank, but for a while, it felt like it was shrinking toward something beautiful. Then came the Thursday. It had been raining, the kind of steady, unremarkable rain that makes days blur together. Ethan had texted that he'd be late. Networking reception can't skip. She'd taken a test that morning, watched the little plus sign appear, and sat on the bathroom floor laughing and crying at the same time. She wanted to tell him in person, but by mid-afternoon, something didn't feel right. A cramp. Then another. Then blood. She called him, voice trembling. "Ethan, I think something's wrong." "I'm in the middle of a panel, Liv," he'd said, low and hurried. "I'll try to get out early, okay? Call the clinic. They'll tell you what to do. I'll come home as soon as I can." He didn't. By the time he walked through the door, hours later, she was curled on the couch in one of his old t-shirts, eyes swollen, an empty hospital wristband on the table. "I'm so sorry," he'd said, dropping to his knees. Traffic was... She'd put her hand over his mouth. "Don't," she whispered. "I can't listen to excuses tonight." He'd held her then, and she'd let him. But a hairline crack had appeared, so fine you could only see it if the light hit it just right. After that, she stopped talking about baby names. She stopped forwarding him articles about new fertility treatments. She stopped sending him hopeful emojis when her period was a day late. Instead, she poured herself into making his life easier, preparing meals so his mind stayed sharp, keeping the house spotless so he could focus, managing the insurance calls so he never had to be the one on hold. All the while, his world was getting bigger. Harvard Club breakfasts, rooftop parties downtown, just drinks with senior partners. And hers was shrinking to the size of his ambitions. On the nights he worked late, she sat at the kitchen table with a mug of chamomile tea and scraps of paper. Ideas still lived inside her. They just had nowhere official to go. She sketched one concept that stuck with her: a more humane mobile onboarding for financial products, a way to turn confusing terms into a conversational flow. She'd drawn it on a Starbucks napkin originally, while Ethan was ranting about his team's inability to solve an activation problem. "You should just do this," she'd said, sliding the napkin over. He'd snapped a photo. "You're a genius, Liv. Seriously. I'll show this to the team." He never mentioned it again. She assumed they'd tossed the idea, that the napkin lived only in her memory. That tiny sketch, born at a sticky cafe table at midnight, would eventually save her life. But for now, she was just a woman in a cardigan, grinding coffee beans at dawn, staring at the Manhattan skyline as if it held all the answers to a question she hadn't quite formed yet. And her husband was already slipping into a world where she no longer fit. Ethan didn't wake up one day and decide, "Today I'll betray my wife." He told himself that for a long time. He told himself it was gradual, accidental, the unintended consequence of success and stress, and a marriage weighed down by grief. The truth was simpler. He liked who he was in certain rooms, more than he liked who he was at home. The first time he noticed Brooke Sullivan, she was standing at the far end of a glass-walled conference room at Ascendant Capital's Midtown office, hands on her hips, arguing with a projection on the screen. "This growth model is garbage," she said, voice calm but unapologetic. "You're assuming 40% user retention based on a survey where people didn't even understand the product. It's wishful thinking dressed up as data." A couple of VPs shifted uncomfortably. One frowned. Ethan, however, leaned back and watched. The consultant from Dallas, he remembered. They'd just poached her from a rival firm. 27, top of her MBA class, rumored to be hungry in all the ways that mattered. "Do you have an alternative, Ms. Sullivan?" asked Eric Wang, the senior partner leading the retreat. Brooke clicked to a different slide. "We build a real funnel," she said. "Segmented by behavior, not demographics. We stop asking people if they like the brand and start watching what they actually do with their money." When she finished, the room was silent for a beat. Then Eric nodded slowly. "Reed, what do you think?" Ethan cleared his throat. "I think we've been babysitting a fantasy for the board," he said. "Brooke's right. We need a model with teeth." She glanced at him then, quick, appraising. A spark passed between them, not romantic yet, but something grounded in mutual recognition. Later, at the coffee bar, she approached him. "You're Ethan Reed, right?" she asked, balancing a steaming paper cup in manicured fingers. "VP of Strategy?" He gave the modest shrug he'd perfected. That's what my email signature says. I read your white paper on behavioral segmentation, she said. The one you co-authored with Mark Delaney. It was annoyingly good, he laughed. Annoyingly? It made me rethink a couple of my own assumptions, she said. I hate when people do that. Most of his conversations with Olivia lately had revolved around logistical decisions, clinic schedules, insurance queries, missing ingredients on the grocery list. Hearing someone talk about his work with that much intensity, it hit a part of him he thought had just gotten quieter with age. They started with emails. Brooke would send follow-up questions after meetings. Then came late-night Slack messages. Brooke, be honest, are we overpromising on the Q3 deck? Ethan, we always overpromise. That's why we get funded. Brooke, you know that's how companies implode, right? He liked that she challenged him. He liked that she stayed late, same as him, that she didn't flinch when senior partners barked about forecasts. He also liked that she noticed the watch on his wrist, the way people deferred to him, the near mythical story of the kid from Newark who climbed into this world with nothing but grit and spreadsheets. You ever feel like you outgrew your life? She asked one night after a 12-hour strategy sprint, when the rest of the team had already spilled out into Ubers or onto subway platforms. They were alone in the conference room, New York City glowing behind them like a screensaver. Empty pizza boxes crowded one corner of the table. Ethan hesitated. Meaning? Like you built one version of yourself, Brooke said, spinning a pen between her fingers. And then, some smaller version of you got frozen in amber somewhere back there. And now you're dragging both around, and they don't fit anymore. He thought of Olivia in her cardigan, standing at the stove stirring sauce, her hair hastily tied back, tired eyes softening every time he walked in, even when he was 4 hours late. He thought of the miscarried pregnancy, the fertility injections, the way she had quietly stopped buying new clothes and instead funneled money into his tuition and their mounting clinic bills. Sometimes, he admitted. Brooke's eyes met his, green, sharp. So, what if this version, she gestured around them, is the one that's real? Later that week, at a happy hour in a dim bar near Stone Street, things tipped. Stale music thumped through overhead speakers. Candlelight flickered against glass. People from the retreat clumped in small circles, nursing beers, gossiping about upcoming partner promotions. Ethan and Brooke ended up at the far end of the bar, slightly apart from the others. She'd loosened her hair and traded her blazer for a leather jacket. He'd undone 2 buttons, jacket slung over the back of his chair. They were too close. Both of them knew it. You ever regret it? She asked suddenly. What? Getting married young, she said. Settling before you really knew what kind of man you were going to become. The phrasing pricked his pride. Settling, as if Olivia were a concession. I wasn't that young, he said. And Olivia, she's a good person. But, Brooke pressed, tilting her head. He took a long sip of his drink. The ice clinked. But sometimes, he said slowly, choosing each word like a lie in a contract, I feel like my life is smaller than it should be. The bar around them blurred. He didn't see the bartender wiping down the counter, the analyst from another team stumbling toward the restroom, the partner's assistant checking her watch. He only saw her. That's not your life's fault, Brooke murmured. It's the people who won't let you grow. It was a brutal sentence, designed to land in the softest part of him. It did. Back near the restrooms, half hidden from the bar, she kissed him first. Quick, hot, the kind of kiss that tastes like risk and liquor and bad decisions. His body reacted before his mind could catch up. For a few seconds, everything went white noise. Then guilt slammed into him. He pulled back. We shouldn't, Brooke smiled, thumb brushing his jaw. No one has to know, Ethan. He thought of Olivia's text earlier. "Good luck today. I made lasagna. It's in the oven. Don't forget your 9 a.m. tomorrow." He could almost hear her voice. Then he heard the bartender shout, "Last call!" and the decision made itself. From that night on, he lived in two worlds. In one, he was a husband who left his shoes at the door and muttered apologies about crazy deadlines. He kissed his wife's cheek, said he was tired, promised to come with her to the next appointment, forgot, apologized, repeated. In the other, he was the man on the rooftop bar, the man who didn't have to talk about grief or hormones, the man whose success was a given, not a question. He told himself it would be temporary, that he'd end it before it went too far, that he'd get through this promotion cycle and then clean up his life. He didn't notice that, somewhere between the late-night messages and the hotel check-ins, a darker version of himself had moved in and locked the door behind him. The first sign was a lipstick stain. It was a shade of deep rose, too bold for Olivia, who rarely wore more than a tinted balm. She noticed it while folding his dress shirt, a small smear on the inside of the collar. It was a Wednesday afternoon. The dryer hummed. Some true crime podcast droned softly from her phone on the counter. The sight sliced through the fog she'd been living in. Her heart skipped, then sped up. She didn't scream. She didn't throw the shirt across the room or start tearing through his things. She just stared. 30 seconds later, she took a photo. When Ethan came home that night, she waited until he'd dropped his briefcase by the door and loosened his tie. The usual script: apology, vague explanation, kiss on the top of her head like she was a loyal dog rather than a partner. "Ethan," she said quietly when he wandered into the kitchen. "Yeah?" He opened the fridge, clearly expecting leftovers. She held up the shirt. "Whose lipstick is this?" He didn't flinch, didn't blink. "Client," he said easily. "She was drunk, hugged me goodbye at the elevator. You know how some of them get after a win. Relax, Liv." The lie slid out so smoothly it made her stomach twist. She swallowed. "Right, of course." She turned back to the stove, stirred the pasta sauce. Her hand shook only slightly. After that, she watched more closely. He changed his phone passcode, started bringing his iPhone into the bathroom even when he showered, bought a new cologne, stronger, more expensive, without mentioning it, and then acted like it had always been there. He started saying things like, "You're overthinking everything lately," and "You've been so emotional, Liv. Maybe you should talk to Emma or Dr. Patel about adjusting your meds." She wasn't on any. When the invitation to the Ascendant Capital Charity Gala arrived, she almost said no. But Ethan insisted. "It'll look weird if I show up alone," he said, straightening his cufflinks in their bedroom mirror. "And honestly, the partners like seeing us as a family man package. Makes them feel safe. You get it, right? Safe." She wore a simple navy dress she'd bought years ago, curled her hair, put on mascara and a lip color a little bolder than usual because Emma had once told her, "Sometimes you have to remind yourself you're allowed to be seen." The gala was held at a hotel ballroom in Midtown, all chandeliers and champagne flutes. Olivia felt out of place the moment they stepped inside. The men wore dark suits that probably cost more than her old car. The women wore dresses that moved like liquid. Conversations drifted around her in fragments. Series C, valuation, regulatory pressure, Europe expansion. Ethan slipped away almost immediately, swallowed by a cluster of executives. She found herself near a high-top table with bite-sized hors d'oeuvres she couldn't bring herself to eat. She wrapped her fingers around a champagne flute so she'd have something to do with her hands. "Don't be dramatic," she told herself. "You're just tired." Then she heard it. "That's Ethan's wife." The words were whispered just behind her. Two women's voices, low but not low enough. "No way," the second woman said. "I thought Brooke was his girlfriend." He brings Brooke everywhere, the first replied. Everyone knows that. God, do you think the wife has any idea? Look at her, the first woman murmured. She looks like she still packs his lunch. Poor thing. Olivia's grip tightened around the stem of her glass. For a moment, the room tilted. The chandelier lights blurred. She didn't turn around. She couldn't. She set the glass down carefully before she dropped it and walked, on unsteady legs, toward the balcony doors. The cold air outside slapped her cheeks, snapping her back into her body. She leaned against the railing, staring out at the city lights. There it was. The truth she'd had all the puzzle pieces for, finally arranging itself into a picture she couldn't ignore. Her husband wasn't just distant. He wasn't just stressed. He wasn't just dealing badly with grief. He had a girlfriend, a mistress, a woman all his colleagues knew by name. And she, the wife, had become a punchline. She barely registered when the balcony door opened behind her. You okay? Ethan asked, the word more irritated than concerned. She wiped her eyes quickly, half turning. Who's Brooke? He froze, just for a second. But she caught it, the flicker. Then his mask slid back into place. No one, he said too quickly. She's a consultant. Don't start, Olivia. People gossip. She stared at him. I heard them, she whispered. They think she's your girlfriend. People in this industry will say anything if it gets them attention, he snapped. You're being paranoid. Paranoid. Dramatic. Emotional. There it was. The holy trinity of words men use to gaslight women into silence. She didn't argue. Not then. But that night, after he fell asleep, she stood in the doorway of their bedroom and watched him. His arms sprawled across his chest, turned away from her, mouth slack with the exhaustion of someone who lived a double life. She felt nothing. No anger. No love. Just a hollow, echoing quiet. Later that month, after a particularly brutal fight, one where he called her suffocating for asking to schedule a joint appointment with the fertility clinic, she woke up with a familiar wave of nausea. At first, she thought it was stress. Then she realized she was late. She bought a pregnancy test from the pharmacy on the corner, tossing it into her tote bag like it was nothing. At home, she took it mechanically, set it on the edge of the sink, walked away. When she came back, 2 pink lines stared up at her. Pregnant. The floor didn't drop out from under her the way she expected. Instead, something inside her shifted into focus. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about whoever was growing inside her, blissfully unaware of the chaos surrounding their existence. She put a hand on her flat stomach and whispered, I'm sorry I brought you into this, but I promise I'll do better for you than this. That night, she didn't tell Ethan. Instead, she opened her laptop, pulled up an old bookmark, the website for Patel and Hargreaves LLP, a law firm she'd once looked up in a moment of despair months earlier. Her cursor hovered over the Request a Consultation button. She clicked. In the box that asked for a brief description of her situation, she wrote, My name is Olivia Parker. My husband is Ethan Reed, VP at Ascendant Capital. I believe he's cheating on me. I also believe the core product he's being promoted for was based on my original concept. I'm pregnant. I need to know my options. When she hit send, her hands were shaking, not from fear, from the feeling of a door, long sealed, finally cracking open. The law firm's lobby smelled like lemon polish and something expensive she couldn't name. Olivia sat on the edge of a leather chair, clutching her tote bag to her chest like a shield. The receptionist had offered her sparkling water. She'd declined and instantly regretted it, her throat dry enough to crack. She almost left twice. Each time she heard Ethan's voice in her head. We can fix this. Everyone has rough patches. Don't be dramatic. Then she thought of the 2 pink lines, and the way her chest tightened whenever she imagined handing her baby over for a weekend, with a man who burned evidence in fireplaces and called it protection. No, she wasn't leaving. "Miss Parker?" The receptionist smiled, gesturing toward a glass door. "Miss Patel will see you now." Amira Patel was in her 40s, with dark hair pulled into a sleek bun and a pair of tortoiseshell glasses that made her look both kind and terrifyingly competent. "Olivia," she said, standing to shake her hand. Her voice was warm, the kind you want in an emergency. "Come in. Sit. Whatever you're comfortable with." Olivia sat. Her hands trembled on her lap. This feels dramatic," she started. "Maybe I should have waited. Maybe I'm overreacting." Amira watched her for a long moment. "Usually," she said gently, "by the time a woman books an appointment with me, she's already underreacted for years. Start where it hurts." So she did. She talked about the MBA, the fertility treatments, the miscarriage, the nights alone, the lipstick on the collar, the whispers at the gala, the way Ethan called her emotional and paranoid whenever she tried to ask questions. Then, hesitantly, she mentioned the app. "It was just a napkin sketch," she said. "We were still in our first apartment. He was stressed about a user flow. I drew something on a Starbucks napkin, and he took a picture. Months later, he got some kind of internal award for rethinking onboarding. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but now his entire promotion is tied to a product that looks suspiciously like what I drew." "Do you still have the napkin?" Amira asked. Olivia shook her head. "No, it got thrown away ages ago." "Do you have anything? Emails, photos, old files?" "Maybe." Olivia frowned. "I always send myself backups. I had this habit of emailing my own ideas to my Gmail. But that was years ago. I haven't used that account in forever." "Check it," Amira said. "Right now, if you can." Olivia pulled out her phone and opened the dusty old Gmail account she barely remembered the password to. After 2 failed attempts and a verification text, she was in. Her inbox was a time capsule, newsletters from her old job, spam, a flagged email from Emma, reminding her to drink water during IVF. Then, near the bottom of a search for idea, she saw it. Subject: onboarding flow idea. Just in case date: 5 years earlier. Her heart hammered as she opened it. The email contained a single attachment, a photo of a crumpled Starbucks napkin, covered in arrows and boxes, annotated in her handwriting. "Reduce friction here. Explain in human language. Ask one simple emotional question first." Beneath it, she had written, "Just in case Ethan forgets, this was my idea." Her throat closed. She slid the phone across the desk. Amira studied the image, then looked up slowly. "Olivia, this is big." "It's just a napkin," she said weakly. "It's time-stamped," Amira said. "It's synced. It's clearly your handwriting. If Ascendant's product flow matches this structure closely enough, this isn't just about divorce. This is about intellectual property, about damages, about leverage." Leverage. The word felt foreign in Olivia's mouth. She'd spent so long feeling like a woman, negotiating against gravity with nothing in her hands. "What do I do?" she whispered. "For now," Amira said, "you do 3 things. 1. You save copies of everything. Texts, emails, calendars, that photo. 2. You stop warning him. Do not tip him off that you're planning anything. 3. You decide what you want." "What I want? In an ideal world," Amira said, "if fear and guilt weren't driving the car. Do you want to stay and demand change? Do you want out? Do you want to co-parent? Do you want to fight for the app? You don't need answers today, but you need to start being honest with yourself." Honesty. She realized suddenly how long it had been since she'd practiced that with herself. She left the firm with a list of documents to gather. bank statements, any old work files she might still have, Ethan's compensation letters, if she could access them, screenshots of the texts where he admitted staying out all night. Outside, the city felt too sharp. She wandered toward a Starbucks on Park Avenue, the site of a dozen old memories, ordered a black coffee she didn't really want, sat near the window and stared at her reflection in the glass. She looked older than she remembered, not in a bad way, just worn. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, then swiped to read the message. "Liv, it's Noah. I just saw you walking out of Patel and Hargreaves. Are you okay?" Noah Carter. She hadn't seen him properly in years, only in LinkedIn updates and the occasional article about his fintech company, Everline. In college, he'd been her closest friend. Late-night pizza, shared textbooks, a near-miss almost kiss after graduation they'd never talked about. She typed back before she could overthink it. "I'm not really." 5 minutes later, Noah walked into the Starbucks, scanning the room until his eyes landed on her. He looked different. Older, sharper suit, a Mont Blanc pen clipped to his pocket. But his smile was exactly the same. "Hey," he said softly, sliding into the seat across from her. "You look like you've had the kind of day that deserves an escape hatch." Olivia let out a short, brittle laugh. Something like that. "Talk to me, Parker," he said. He'd always called her by her last name. "What's going on?" she told him. Not every detail. There wasn't enough coffee in the world for that. But enough. Ethan's late nights, the lipstick, the whispers, the napkin, the baby, the law firm. She spoke quietly, almost clinically. But Noah's eyes darkened with each new piece. When she finished, he sat back, jaw tight. "You should have called me sooner," he said. She shook her head. "I didn't want to drag anyone into this." "Drag me?" He huffed a humorless laugh. "Liv, I would have driven to Jersey at 3 a.m. if you'd called." Her cheeks warmed. "I didn't know if I still had that right." "You always do," he said simply. Silence settled between them, not awkward this time, just heavy with things unsaid. Finally, Noah leaned forward. "I'm going to say something you're not going to like," he warned. She braced. "You keep talking like Ethan built this app and this life, and you're just collateral damage," he said. "But from everything you've told me, and from what I can see, you had the mind that sparked the thing they're cashing in on." "It was one sketch," she protested. "One sketch can be an empire in this industry," he said. "Here's what nobody at Ascendant is going to tell you. You don't have to fight him just for scraps of credit. You could build your own version, clean, ethical. Yours." She stared at him. "Me? Start something? Why not?" His voice was calm, confident. The kind of confidence he used in boardrooms, now turned gently toward her. "You understand people and money better than half the founders I see pitching." "I'm pregnant," she said, the word out before she could stop it. He blinked. "I kind of assumed that was a possibility," he said quietly. "Doesn't change your brain. Doesn't change your brain." She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear that until the relief washed through her. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, not his usual one, but a plain one with only his phone and a private email. "Come to my office sometime this week," he said. "No pressure. Just let me show you what it looks like when you're the one in the founder seat." She took the card. It felt heavier than it looked. "You don't have to decide anything today," Noah added. "Just don't keep living a life where you're the ghostwriter of someone else's success story." She looked at him, then at her reflection in the glass again. For the first time in a long time, she saw not just a wife or a victim. She saw a woman standing at the edge of a different kind of story, one she hadn't written yet. The shift began so quietly Ethan almost missed it. Olivia stopped arguing. She stopped crying when he came home at 1 a.m., smelling like expensive liquor and a perfume she didn't own. She stopped asking where he'd been, stopped reminding him of appointments, stopped cooking elaborate dinners only to sit alone at the table when he texted at the last minute. Running late. Don't wait up. Instead, she was calm, polite, distant in a way he couldn't quite parse. On Tuesday evening, he came home expecting the usual storm. He'd just flown back from LA, a business trip that involved one client meeting, 2 rooftop bars, and a night at the Beverly Hills Hotel with Brooke that had included a Bluetooth speaker, room service, and him saying things he didn't remember word for word, but definitely wouldn't want played in court. As he stepped into the kitchen, Olivia was sitting at the table with a mug of ginger tea and a hardcover book. Something about women and wildness and archetypes. He didn't bother reading the title. A pen was tucked behind her ear. "You're up," he said, dropping his briefcase onto the counter. "Hi," she replied, not looking up. He waited. No questions, no accusations. "Long day," he added. She turned a page. "You're awfully quiet lately," he said, irritation flaring. "Did someone put ideas in your head?" She looked up then, slowly. There was something in her eyes he hadn't seen before. Clarity, maybe. Or a kind of stillness that scared him more than any rage would have. "I don't what?" she asked softly. He faltered. "You don't do anything. You're home all day." The words came out nastier than he'd meant. Shame flickered through him, and died when she didn't react the way she usually did. She just stood, walked to the fridge, poured herself more water, and walked past him again, as if he were furniture. "Are you mad at me?" he demanded. "No," she said simply. "Then why are you acting like this?" She closed her book carefully. "Ethan," she said, "who is Brooke Sullivan to you?" He froze, exactly 1 second, just long enough. Then he laughed, brittle. "She's a consultant. I told you that." "I saw the photos," Olivia said quietly. "At the Beverly Hills Hotel. You were supposed to be in a conference in San Diego. There you were, next to the pool, with her hand on your chest. It was on someone's public Instagram story. I don't think you realized ascendant employees follow each other." His blood ran cold. "You humiliated me," she continued, her voice steady. "Not just privately. Publicly. You made me a joke in rooms I've never even entered." He opened his mouth. "I can explain." She held up a hand. "You don't need to. I already know." He reached for his go-to. "Liv, you've been so emotional." "Don't," she said. "Don't call me emotional. Don't twist this into me being unstable. You lied, Ethan. You lied for months. You slept with another woman. You built a second life and expected me to water your plants in the first one." His jaw clenched. "We can fix this," he insisted. "Couples recover from this kind of thing all the time. We can do therapy. You're pregnant, for God's sake." She went very still at that. "So you know," she said. "I saw the test," he said. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I needed to see who you were before I decided what kind of father you would be," she said. "And you've answered that question beautifully." The conversation ended without a conclusion. Ethan went to bed, angry, convinced she would cool down in a few days. He didn't know she had a second meeting scheduled with Amira. He didn't know she'd already moved money into a separate account, quietly, just enough to cover first and last month's rent somewhere safe. He didn't know she'd printed out spreadsheets of their joint finances, lists of his restricted stock units, records of bonuses. 2 nights later, he found the folder. It was on the bottom shelf of the bedroom closet, tucked behind a drawer of her scarves. He'd been looking for an old cufflink set when the label on the folder caught his eye. Household finances. Legal, his heart thudded. Inside, he found printed spreadsheets, notes about his compensation packages, a list of account numbers, and a copy of the email with the napkin sketch. Rage rose, hot and irrational. When Olivia came home from yet another doctor's appointment, he hadn't bothered asking for details. He was waiting for her in the living room, folder in hand. "You looking for this?" he asked, voice silky with anger. She froze. "Give it back, Ethan." "You've been busy," he said, flipping through the pages. Lawyers, old Gmail archives, asset inventories. "I have to say, I'm almost impressed." "That's private," she said. "You're my wife," he snapped. "Nothing you have is private." Something in her expression shuddered. "Give it back," she repeated. Instead, he walked calmly to the fireplace. "Ethan," her voice trembled. "Don't you dare." He tossed the folder into the flames. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the edges curled, blackened, and burst into bright orange. "No!" Olivia lunged forward, but he grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "Stop!" he shouted. "Liv, are you insane?" "Those are my documents," she cried. "My work!" "It's our work," he said coldly, watching the last page catch. "And I'm protecting us." She yanked her arm free and dropped to her knees, reaching toward the fireplace as if she could salvage something. Paper turned to ash under her fingers. Smoke stung her eyes. "You can't do this," she whispered. "You can't erase everything." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration boiling over. "Liv, listen to yourself. Lawyers, financial spreadsheets. You're spiraling. We don't need scorched earth tactics. We need to calm down and think." "You burned my leverage," she said, looking up at him. "I burned your paranoia," he shot back. "You're being dramatic. Again." There it was. That word. Something in her broke, but not in the way he expected. She stood slowly, shoulders shaking, eyes bright with tears she refused to let fall. "I don't know who you are anymore," she said. "I'm the man keeping this marriage from falling apart," he insisted. "No," she whispered. "You're the reason it did." She grabbed her coat and her keys with shaking hands. "Where are you going?" he demanded. "Away from you." She left barefoot, not realizing it until she reached the driveway, and the cold concrete bit into her soles. She collapsed into the driver's seat of her car and sobbed, forehead pressed against the steering wheel, breath coming in ragged gasps. Her evidence was gone. Her spreadsheets were gone. Her plan, carefully built over weeks, had just turned to smoke in front of her. For the first time, a new fear took shape. Not that she would lose to Ethan, but that she might lose herself in the process. Her phone buzzed in the cup holder. She ignored it. Then it buzzed again. And again. Finally, she swiped blindly. "Noah. Olivia, are you safe?" "Noah. Call me, please." "Noah. I'm not far. Say the word. I'll come get you." Her fingers shook as she typed one word. "Yes." 15 minutes later, his car pulled up beside hers. He stepped out, face pale with worry, and crouched beside her door. "Liv," he said softly. "Come here." The moment he wrapped his arms around her, her composure shattered. She cried into his chest, messy and broken and loud, in a way she'd never allowed herself to be with Ethan. "He burned everything," she choked out. "All my documents, all my work. I have nothing." Noah didn't say, "You still have the napkin email," because he knew that wasn't what she meant. He let her cry. When her sobs finally subsided into hiccups, he tilted her chin up gently. "Is that everything you had?" he asked. "Yes," she whispered. "He destroyed it all." "No," Noah said quietly. "He didn't." She frowned. "There's something you don't know yet," he said. "Come on. There's someone you need to talk to." He drove her to a quiet diner in Brooklyn that looked like it hadn't changed since 1985. Red vinyl booths, cracked in places, neon sign flickering outside. In a corner booth, a woman with perfectly waved hair and a trench coat sat stirring a cup of tea like it was a lifeline. Olivia froze. "Absolutely not," she said under her breath. I'm not doing this. Noah put a steadying hand on her elbow. Just listen, he murmured. Brooke stood as they approached, guilt written into every line of her posture. Olivia, she began. I know I'm the last person you want to see. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I need to tell you something. Olivia's muscles were coiled tight. She slid into the booth across from Brooke, arms crossed over her chest, every nerve buzzing. Brooke swallowed. Ethan is lying to you, she said, and not just about me. Be specific, Olivia said. Her voice surprised even herself. Steady, clipped, controlled. He's been telling people at work you're unstable, Brooke said. That you're imagining things. He bragged about taking your idea. He said you'd never be able to prove it. And he's been messing with the numbers on the product reports. People are starting to notice. But he's blaming you, saying you're the one who's been stressing him out so much he makes mistakes. Olivia felt cold spread through her limbs. Noah leaned in. Brooke, he said, show her. Brooke pulled out her iPhone, opened the voice memos app, selected one file, pressed play. Ethan's voice spilled into the booth, clear and unmistakable. Olivia's too emotional to ever prove anything. The idea was mine by the time we shipped. Nobody cares who sketched what on a napkin in some crummy apartment. If she pushes me, I'll bury her. I'll make sure everyone thinks she's gone off the rails. The buzzing diner noise faded to a dull hum. Olivia's heart pounded in her ears. Brooke's hands shook. I recorded it a couple of weeks ago, she said. I thought he'd protect me. But when rumors started about the numbers, he told me if anything blew up, he'd make it look like I doctored the files. That he'd tell people I seduced him for career gains. I realized then he'd throw anyone under the bus. Olivia stared at the phone, at the waveform of Ethan's voice bouncing across the screen. He'd burned her papers. But he hadn't burned this. This wasn't just leverage. It was a weapon. For the first time since the night she saw those two pink lines, something fierce rose inside her. Not grief, not fear. A quiet, focused rage. Thank you, she said to Brooke, surprising both of them. You just changed everything. She placed a hand on her stomach under the table. He'd tried to erase her, to gaslight her into silence, to rewrite her story. Now, his own words would undo him. The night of the Tech Innovation Gala at the Plaza Hotel felt like standing on the edge of a storm. Outside, Manhattan air was crisp, charged with late fall chill. Inside, the ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and people who had learned to move like they owned every room they entered. Journalists milled around, investors clinked glasses, founders retouched lipstick and fixed pocket squares in mirrored surfaces. Ethan Reed arrived in a black tuxedo that fit like a second skin. His cufflinks gleamed. His Rolex caught the light every time he shook a hand. He told himself the knot in his stomach was just adrenaline. Beside him, Brooke walked with measured grace, playing her role one last time. Her dress was understated, her makeup softer than usual. Ethan barely noticed the way her fingers trembled around her clutch. Smile, he murmured under his breath. There are cameras everywhere. She did. But it didn't reach her eyes. As they entered, a photographer snapped their picture. Ethan Reed, someone called. Over here. Big night, huh? I hear the product demo next month is going to blow the roof off. Ethan flashed his practiced grin. We're excited, he said. Across the room, two compliance officers from Ascendant's internal audit team watched him with clinical detachment. Ethan didn't notice. What he did notice, 20 minutes later, was the shift in the room. People began glancing toward the entrance. Whispers rippled. Heads turned. He followed their gaze and felt the blood drain from his face. Olivia had arrived. She appeared in the doorway like someone stepping into a new life. Her midnight blue gown hugged her figure. the small swell of her pregnancy just visible if you knew to look. Her hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders. Her posture was straight, her eyes clear. She was not the woman in cardigans and puffy eyes he'd left behind. Walking beside her was Noah Carter. His charcoal suit was immaculate, his presence the kind that drew subtle respect. He rested a hand lightly on the small of Olivia's back as they moved into the room. Not possessive, not performative, just steady. A murmur ran through the crowd. "Is that Olivia Reed?" "Parker," someone corrected under their breath. "She's going by Parker again." "And Noah Carter? Isn't he Everline's founder?" "I heard she's launching something." Ethan's chest tightened. Olivia's gaze swept the room, inevitably finding his. For a heartbeat, their eyes locked. He searched for something familiar, hurt, pleading, the neediness he'd grown so used to. Instead, he saw nothing that belonged to him. Her expression was polite, distant. She might have been looking at a stranger. She broke eye contact first, turning to respond to something Noah said. They moved into a growing circle of investors, where people greeted her with curiosity and, disturbingly, respect. Brooke shifted beside him. "You okay?" she asked quietly. "Fine," he said. "This is a stunt. She's trying to rattle me." He didn't realize the night was about to blow open. An hour in, after cocktail chatter and awkward run-ins with executives, who suddenly seemed less effusive, the lights dimmed. The MC, a charismatic host from a tech magazine, took the stage. "Tonight," she said, "we honor the people reshaping how money and technology move through our lives." Ethan loosened his shoulders, readying himself. He knew Ascendant was on the program. He'd seen the internal emails. Their flagship product was supposed to be highlighted for revolutionizing behavioral onboarding. "The next spotlight," the host continued, "goes to an emerging platform that has quietly been making waves, founded by someone who understands both the human and technical sides of finance." A logo appeared on the giant screens behind her. Not Ascendant's, Parker Ledger. The tagline beneath it read, "Finance that finally speaks human." Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host announced, "please welcome the founder of Parker Ledger, Olivia Parker." The applause was immediate and shockingly loud. Noah squeezed Olivia's hand briefly before she walked to the stage. Her heels clicked, steady and unhurried. Under the lights, she looked impossibly composed. Ethan felt like he was watching an out-of-body experience. "She can't," he muttered. "She didn't." Brooke said nothing. Olivia took the microphone. "Good evening," she said. Her voice flowed through the speakers, clear as glass. "For years, finance has spoken a language most people don't understand. We punish them for not being fluent, then blame them when they fall behind. Parker Ledger was born from one question. What if we stopped talking down to people and started listening to them instead?" She didn't mention Ascendant. She didn't mention Ethan. She didn't mention napkins or miscarriages or burning folders. She didn't have to. Behind her, a short product video played, mock-ups and early prototypes of an app that guided users through complex financial decisions in plain language, with empathy built into the flow. People nodded. Some murmured, "Smart," or "Finally." Noah watched from the sidelines, pride written openly on his face. Ethan barely heard the rest of her speech. His mind was sprinting through worst-case scenarios. How far has she gotten? Who's funding her? How much does she know? When she stepped down, the applause rolled over him like a wave. He didn't notice the compliance officers until they were standing right next to him. "Mr. Reed," one of them said, low enough that only he and Brooke could hear. He turned, irritation snapping into place as a shield. "Can this wait? I'm about to go on stage." "I'm afraid it can't," the officer said. He held up a discreet security badge. We need to speak with you privately about some urgent matters regarding your division's financial reporting." Ethan's mouth went dry. "This is not the time," he hissed. "Schedule something with my assistant." "We already did," the second officer said. "You postponed twice. This won't wait any longer." Brooke shifted, her face blank. "What is this?" Ethan demanded. "Some kind of spectacle?" "We're trying very hard to avoid that," the first officer replied. "Please come with us. Now." Ethan glanced toward the stage, where the host had moved on to the next segment. No one seemed to be watching him, yet. "Fine," he snapped. "But this is ridiculous." They led him through a side door into a quiet hallway. The muffled roar of the ballroom faded behind them. One of the officers tapped on a conference room door. A senior board member from Ascendant, Richard Hale, sat inside, expression grim. "Ethan," he said. "Sit." "What is going on?" Ethan demanded, remaining standing. "We've been reviewing internal logs," Richard said. "There are inconsistencies in financial reports tied to your credentials, adjustments made late at night, just before quarterly reviews. Numbers that look massaged." "I flagged those," Ethan lied smoothly. "I've been the one raising alarms." "Strange," the other officer remarked dryly. "Our documentation suggests otherwise." "And then there's this," Richard said, sliding a phone across the table. On the screen was a voice memo file. Ethan's stomach dropped. Someone pressed play. His own voice filled the room. "Olivia's too emotional to ever prove anything. The idea was mine. If she pushes me, I'll bury her. I'll make sure she looks unstable." For a second, the world narrowed to a pinprick. "That's out of context," Ethan said hoarsely. "Is it?" Richard asked. "Because combined with Ms. Sullivan's statement and Ms. Parker's evidence, it paints a very clear picture." "Ms. Sullivan's—" Ethan turned to Brooke, who had slipped into the room without him noticing. "You recorded me?" Her eyes were wet but steady. "You threatened to ruin my career," she said. "I believed you could. I needed protection." "You planned this," Ethan snarled. "Both of you. You're trying to frame me." "No one is framing you," Richard said. "Your own behavior is doing a fine job." "We advise you not to say anything else without counsel present," the compliance officer added. Ethan's chest heaved. "You're going to take her word over mine?" he spat. "She's my ex-wife. She's pregnant. She's the documented originator of the product concept you've been trading on," Richard cut in. "We've reviewed the time-stamped email. The similarities are not subtle." Outside, faintly, applause rose again. In the ballroom, Olivia was being surrounded by people who wanted business cards and meetings, who saw in her not a paranoid wife, but a founder. In the small conference room, Ethan Reed's carefully constructed empire began to crumble. 2 days after the gala, Olivia stood outside the townhouse she used to call home. The November wind tugged at the hem of her coat. The small suitcase at her side held only the things she couldn't stand to leave behind. Photos of her parents, her worn copy of Women Who Run with the Wolves, a few pieces of jewelry that hadn't been gifts from Ethan. Noah parked at the curb and turned off the engine. "You want me to come in?" he asked. She shook her head. "No. If things go badly, I'd rather not give him another story to spin about you." He nodded, though his jaw clenched. "I'll be right here." She reached over and squeezed his hand. "I know." Inside, the house smelled the same, clean laundry and the faint scent of the coffee beans she used to grind each morning. It was disorienting, the way spaces could hold the ghost of routines long after they'd broken. "Olivia," Ethan's voice floated from the living room. "That you?" He appeared in the doorway, hair unkempt, dark circles under his eyes, t-shirt wrinkled. The confident executive was gone. In his place stood a man unraveling. "You came," he said, like he wasn't sure she would. My attorney said it would be smarter to get the rest of my things before the next hearing, she replied. I won't be long. He followed her up the stairs, words spilling out before they reached the bedroom. You know they overreacted, right? He said. The board. They're scared. This will blow over. You were fired, Ethan, she said quietly, opening the closet. For cause. That's not a public relations hiccup. That's the consequence of your own actions. He flinched. We both know you pushed this, he said. Brooke wouldn't have gone to compliance if you hadn't dragged her into your vendetta. Olivia folded a sweater, placed it in the suitcase. Brooke went to compliance when she realized you'd gladly let her take the fall, she said. Don't blame me because the women in your life finally stopped protecting you from yourself. Don't make this a gender war, he snapped. You're better than that. I'm done being better than the truth, she said. He watched her pack for a moment, chest rising and falling too quickly. You're enjoying this, he said suddenly. Seeing me like this. You wanted to destroy me. She stopped, turned to face him fully. I didn't want to destroy you, she said. I wanted you to stop destroying me. His face crumpled, anger giving way to something raw. I don't want to lose you, he said. We were good together once, Liv. We were, she agreed. Before I shrank myself to fit inside your story. We can get that back, he insisted. Therapy. Time. She shook her head. You're not sorry you hurt me. You're sorry you lost. He stepped closer, desperation bleeding into his voice. I've lost my job, my reputation, half my net worth, everything I built. Isn't that enough? There's no amount of external punishment that changes who you are if you won't look at it, she said. That's your work. Not mine. Not the board's. Not Brooke's. Yours. Silence stretched between them. Then he said, the one thing he should never have said. You're nothing without me. The words hung in the air like a slap. For a moment, he looked as shocked as she felt, as if he hadn't realized he'd dug that deep for a weapon. Olivia blinked. Once. Twice. Then she exhaled, a slow, almost relieved breath. There it is, she said. There what is? The story you've been telling yourself for years, she replied. That you made me. That I was just a supporting character in your big, important life. She'd zipped the suitcase. The sound was louder than it needed to be. I was nothing when I was with you, Ethan, she said quietly. Because I let myself be. That's on me. But I'm done. He grabbed her arm, not roughly but firmly. Don't walk out, he begged. We can rebuild. For the baby. For us. She looked down at his hand, then back up at his face. For years, you needed me to be small, so you could feel big, she said. You needed a soft place to land, so you could be sharp everywhere else. You needed a wife who would absorb every cut from the world, so you could show up shiny the next day. She gently uncurled his fingers from her arm. What our baby needs, she continued, is a mother who remembers her own worth. Not one who teaches them that love means swallowing your voice to keep someone else comfortable. He sank onto the edge of the bed, like someone had pulled a plug in him. You really hate me that much, he whispered. She paused at the doorway. I don't hate you, she said. Hatred would mean you still take up that much space inside me. I'm done with you. There's a difference. Downstairs, the sunlight spilled across the entryway floor. She picked up her suitcase and stepped out into it. Noah stood by the car, hands in his pockets, watching the house like it might spit out one last insult. When he saw her, his shoulders dropped in visible relief. You okay? He asked. She considered the question. I'm not okay, she said. But I'm free. His mouth curved. That's a good place to start from. As they pulled away, she glanced in the side mirror. The townhouse grew smaller and smaller, until it was just another building in a long line of almost identical ones. For years, it had been her entire world. Now, it was just an address she used to live at. Winter arrived like a reset button. Snow dusted the rooftops of Brooklyn Heights, softening the noise of the city. The East River moved sluggishly under a pale sky. In her small but bright apartment, Olivia Parker brewed coffee without a knot in her stomach for the first time in... she couldn't even remember how long. Her new place was a walk-up with exposed brick and crooked floors. The landlord, Mrs. Delgado, lived downstairs and left her tamales on the first snow day. Because you look like you forget to eat when you're working, mija. Plants lined the windowsills, thriving in the light. Prints from local artists covered the walls. A whiteboard full of user flows and feature ideas stood where a TV might once have been. On her desk, her old MacBook Air hummed next to a new monitor Noah had insisted on buying for her. "You're not a college student anymore," he'd said. "Consider this your founder upgrade." Parker Ledger was no longer just a logo on a slide. It was a living thing. Early prototypes in test flight, user interviews scheduled with real people, a small distributed team that met on Zoom and believed in what they were building. Her days were full again, but with work that felt like hers. Some mornings she woke before dawn, not from anxiety but from excitement, her brain already sketching out a new onboarding experiment or a partnership idea before she even had coffee. Her pregnancy progressed alongside the company. Ultrasound photos shared space on the fridge with wireframe sketches. The first time she heard the baby's heartbeat, she cried in the exam room, hand clamped around Emma's, because yes, Emma had come to that appointment. "I'm so proud of you," Emma whispered afterward. "Not for leaving him, for choosing you." Ethan's presence in her life shrank to a cluster of legal documents and occasionally unpleasant headlines. He fought the firing. Then he fought the intellectual property claim. Then he tried to fight the divorce terms. He lost. The board of Ascendant, under increasing scrutiny from regulators and terrified of reputational damage, settled. They issued a formal apology for dismissing her early contributions and for the way internal whispers had painted her as unstable. They acknowledged her role in the conceptual foundation of the flagship product. The settlement money was significant, enough to ensure she and the baby would be okay, even if Parker Ledger took longer than expected to become profitable. Enough to erase the last financial tether that tied her to Ethan. But it wasn't the check that mattered most. It was the public acknowledgement, the rewriting of the narrative. No longer the hysterical wife, no longer the +1. Founder. Visionary. Parker Ledger's CEO. "You know you don't have to prove anything anymore, right?" Noah said one evening as they sat on her balcony, mugs of hot chocolate warming their hands. Snowflakes drifted lazily around them. "I know," she said. "But I want to." He smiled. "Good answer." They were careful with each other, she and Noah. There were moments, the way his eyes lingered on her when she laughed, the way her hand lingered on his arm longer than necessary. That sparked something familiar and terrifying and new, but neither of them rushed it. "I don't want you to be my rebound," she'd said bluntly one night. "I don't want to be your anything until you don't need me to be," he'd replied. So they built something different first. Trust, collaboration, friendship resurrected and matured. On a quiet January morning, she signed the final divorce papers in Amira's office. "You did well," Amira said, sliding the documents into a folder. "Not just in court. Here." She tapped her chest. "You didn't let him drag you into the ugliness he lives in." "I wanted to," Olivia admitted. "Some days I wanted to burn his entire life down. And instead," Amira said, "you built your own. That's the bigger revenge." Revenge, Olivia realized, wasn't even the right word anymore. Justice fit better. Healing, even more so. The day Parker Ledger officially launched its beta, she stood in front of her bathroom mirror, 8 months pregnant, and barely recognized the woman staring back at her. This Olivia had laugh lines at the corners of her eyes, and a softness around her middle that spoke of both baby and late-night snacks. She also had a steadiness in her gaze that the other Olivia, the one who cried on bathroom floors and apologized for existing, had never quite found. "You did it," she whispered to her reflection. "We did it," Emma corrected from the doorway, holding 2 mismatched coffee mugs. "You, me, Noah, your therapist, Amira, Mrs. Delgado, that barista downstairs who always slips you an extra muffin." Olivia laughed. "Fine, we did it." No. When the first wave of users logged into the app, she watched the dashboard stats climb with an almost maternal protectiveness. People were responding to the tone, the clarity, the sense that the app wasn't judging them for what they didn't know. This is what happens when someone who actually understands shame and money builds the product, Noah said on a late-night call. "You're changing something real, Liv." A few weeks later, she gave birth to a baby girl at New York Presbyterian Hospital. Labor was long and messy, and nothing like the curated birth stories she'd once saved on Pinterest. But when the nurse placed the wriggling, furious, perfect human on her chest, Olivia felt something inside her settle in a way it never had before. She named her Maya Elaine Parker. Maya for illusion, a reminder of the lies she'd escaped, and Elaine for the grandmother whose quiet strength had kept their family's house standing through every storm. She didn't call Ethan from the delivery room. Legally, he had the right to know. Practically, Amira handled the notification through his lawyer. Weeks later, when he petitioned for visitation, the court imposed supervised visits only, citing his ongoing emotional volatility and the documented pattern of manipulation. Olivia watched from behind a 2-way mirror the first time he held Maya in the sterile visitation center. He looked smaller than she remembered. "Hey, little one," he said, voice cracking. I'm your dad." He cried. She didn't feel satisfaction, or gloating, just a distant, quiet sorrow for the man he could have become, and chose not to. Afterward, as she strapped Maya back into her car seat, Noah waited by the car. He looked at her face, searching. "How was it?" he asked gently. "Hard," she said. "Necessary. Over." He nodded. They drove back to Brooklyn, where her apartment smelled like baby powder and coffee, and the faint metallic scent of a laptop that had been overworked. That night, after she finally got Maya to sleep, she stepped out onto the balcony. Snow had started again, flakes drifting lazily past the streetlights. Noah joined her with 2 mugs of tea. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Tired." "Good." He hesitated. "I've been waiting a long time to say something," he said. "But I needed you to get here first, to this version of your life." She turned to him, heart thudding. "Say it," she said. "I love you," he said simply. "Not the broken you I met at Starbucks that day. Not the college you I almost kissed outside the library. The you who walked out of that house even when it scared you. The you who built Parker Ledger while growing a whole human. The you who remembers her worth now." Tears stung her eyes, but they weren't the kind that choked. "I don't need saving anymore," she said. "I know," he replied. "That's why I'm here." She stepped closer, so their shoulders brushed. "I love you too," she said. "Not because I need you, because I want you. There's a difference." He laughed softly. Relief and joy threaded together. They kissed then, slow, unhurried, with the kind of tenderness that comes when 2 people know how hard the other fought to stand there at all. Behind them, the city lights flickered. In the next room, Maya slept, the quiet rise and fall of her tiny chest the softest sound in the world. Olivia Parker had lost almost everything once: her marriage, her illusions, the life she thought she wanted. But in the ruins, she'd found something better: herself. If you're still here, listening to Olivia's journey all the way to this moment, it means something in her story touched a part of yours. Maybe you felt like she did, shrinking yourself so someone else could feel big. Maybe you've survived a betrayal that made you question your own reality. Or maybe you just needed the reminder that it's never too late to rewrite your story, even if you have to walk away barefoot with nothing but your courage. If this story gave you strength, made you feel seen, or helped you believe in second chances, for love, for career, for yourself, please don't leave quietly. Hit like so more people find this story. Subscribe if you want more long-form, real lifestyle drama fiction like this, and share this video with someone who needs to be reminded. You are not broken. You are not too emotional. You are powerful, and you are allowed to choose yourself.
We need to stop the Jews from feeling excluded. I once fucked a baby, and then I fucked him again. So you want to get through that one. Otherwise, people get the wrong idea. They'll think you only fucked that baby once.
Thanks for getting through the traffic. I drove here, and on the way here, I saw a bumper sticker on a car, and it said, "Tell your girlfriend I said thanks." Isn't that a little personal for a bumper sticker, really? A bumper sticker should be like, "Hey, I'm in front of you," whatever, you know. Not, "Hey, I fucked your girlfriend." You want that on your car all day for whoever's behind you? Tell your girlfriend I said thanks. How does he know I'm not behind him, just getting mad and crazy, taking it personal, motherfucker? I follow him home. I get out of my car in his driveway with a pipe. What the fuck does that mean? Thank her for what exactly? Wait a minute, you fucked my girlfriend? Then you made that bumper sticker and found me in traffic and got in front of me? Motherfucker. And I just beat him to death with a pipe right there in his driveway. And jerk off on his corpse. Didn't need that part. Didn't need it. Story was totally complete without the jerking off on the corpse. It's too late. I was at a bar the other night, doesn't matter where because I'm lying, but must be awful to be other kinds of stuff. You know, I'm glad I'm this. This is a pretty good deal when you consider the alternatives. Anything else, any other kind of thing, you're in the food chain. You're in the food. We are out of the food chain. I don't know if we fully appreciate the fact that we got out of the food chain. That is a massive upgrade. Because for every other living thing, life ends by being eaten. That's how all life ends, is every single life except human life. Every life ends like this. Ah! 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 We're the only ones that get to just die old in a bed. Just, I love you. I mean, imagine if we were still in the food chain on top of everything else. Imagine if we were in the food chain. It would just be another thing you gotta deal with. You're already having a bad day. You wake up in the morning, you're making breakfast, you burn your toast, and it's too late to try again. And your kid comes in and says, "Bleh," and you're like, fine. And it's just, why? You get a thing in the mail that says that your phone's different and your mortgage is another company now. What? I don't get it. Then you're walking to work like, why do I even bother? Oh, shit. God damn it. There's always fucking cheetahs at the train station. Stop it. Do you think that sharks would be embarrassed if they knew that we could all see their fins sticking out of the top of the water?